Okay, so we're going to talk about the different types of leadership styles and how effective they can be. I know I normally don't tell you Wikipedia is a good one, but this one actually, there's some pictures from Wikipedia on it, so it's not so bad. So we're going to talk about, I'm not one of these presenters, it's just a really great leadership PowerPoint that has a lot of really great examples. So we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the different types of leadership styles. So what's a leader anyway? A leader can be defined as anyone with the ability to get others to produce or to follow their direction. So hopefully as a teacher, I'll lead you guys into doing your homework or to learning things. I do it different ways sometimes, I think, but there are different kinds of leaders. So a leader is someone who basically can get you to do what they want you to do, to follow our lead. Okay. So what leadership style works best for you and for your organization? So you're going to have to think about that. I mean, there are many types of leaderships and many types of leadership styles, and there's many types of leaders. And even though we're going to talk about some very specific types of leadership styles, even the people that follow those specific leadership styles or follow into that category, they may do it in different ways. Even though they're using the different styles, they may need, and you may need to use different types of leadership in different situations. As a parent, lots of times you're an authoritarian. You do what I say. Sometimes you get to make group decisions. Sometimes you get choices. So we're going to talk about the different types of leadership. And as we go through that, you need to think about what kind of leader you could work for best when you're out in the work world. Know that no matter what you do in life, even if you're self-employed, you're still going to have to follow, or you're going to have someone that you answer to. Sometimes it's the government, sometimes it's the state, depending on regulations and stuff. But just know that there's always a type of leadership that we have to follow. So basic leadership styles, there are 4 basic leadership styles, and we're going to talk about each one of those. The autocratic, bureaucratic, laissez-faire, and democratic. And once again, it's kind of one of those things. We have to follow the leader in some way or another. And just sometimes different, and sometimes in different situations, it will determine what works best. You guys do a lot of group work in school, and so when someone has to take charge of the group, sometimes they have different kinds of styles, and you'll be able to tell the difference in as we go through this based on also personalities that you know of people. So autocratic leadership style, it's a classical approach. So basically the person in charge retains as much power and decision-making authority as possible. This is someone who basically, you're in a group and they say, okay, we're going to do it my way, and this is what I want you to do. You do this task, you do this task, you do this task, and I'll follow back up to make sure you're doing it. They don't give you a say in what you're going to do. They don't consult staff or allow them to give any input. They just say, this is your job and you're going to do it. And you better, and you have to follow what they say. You take your orders and they don't explain to you, well, why, if you want to know, well, why am I having to do that? They'll say, because I said so. Parents tend to be autocratic a whole lot. And then at the end, so with an autocratic system or an autocratic leader, there are punishments and rewards. So if you think about in a parent kind of setting with this, if you do what you're supposed to, if I tell you, let's think about this as in the classroom setting. If I tell you, you have 3 days and to finish this project, and this is how you need to do it, which I do a lot with projects. If you follow all of the directions, you read your rubric, you're going to get 100. If you don't read the rubric and follow the directions, you're not going to pass. That would be punishments and rewards. You're rewarded with a good grade because you did the work like you were asked to do, or kind of told to do. The punishment would be that bad grade because you didn't follow all of the directions appropriately. So that's greatly criticized. Hitler was an autocratic leader. The highest, now I do give you guys some choices on what your projects are, but I do give you kind of structure. So they're greatly criticized. Hitler was awarded Germany's highest award for bravery, the Iron Cross, but asked physician Warren Haas to recommend a reliable method of suicide. He suggested combining a dose of cyanide with a gunshot to the head. So this is, I mean, basically we all know that Hitler, we know from World War II that Hitler did commit suicide because he didn't want to get caught. Now, Hitler did, in an autocratic society, he did a lot of really horrible things. We know that from learning about World War II. We know the horrible things that he did, but he was considered an autocratic leader. When Hitler gave his, the Third Reich their orders, they were expected to follow them out without question. When he told soldiers to put people in the crematorium or into the gas chamber, or told them to round up all of the Jewish people in areas and put them in concentration camps, they were not supposed to ask why. They were just supposed to do what he told them to do. Now, one of the things about Hitler that helped him come to power was the way that he presented his ideas. He was very charismatic. He was very he had a lot of ideas that at the time he made them sound better than they were. So we have to be very careful of autocratic leaders because very, very often they are very charismatic. They draw people in based on the things that they say, whether they believe them to be true or not, and they have very unrealistic or very unachievable ideas. So basically, even though Hitler was considered very brave in the German army, and he did a lot of really horrible things because his ideas were the only ideas that were accepted, and if you didn't accept his ideas, then you could basically leave the planet. Not all of it was bad. Some of the stuff that was the most effective of the autocratic style is that sometimes you can find new ideas from untrained staff. So sometimes people will have ideas just because they have had experiences that they can bring in. So effective supervision can be provided only through detailed order. So if someone really needs detail-oriented instructions, they need a list, and I can do anything you want me to if I have a list to follow. Well, those kind of people that list-oriented person, sometimes autocratic things work well for them. Also, they don't have to, sometimes there are people who they just need that. They need someone to tell them, okay, I want you to show up at 8 o'clock. I want you to do these things by lunch, take a lunch for 30 minutes, do these things by the afternoon, have them completed, go home by 5 o'clock. That's what they need. And sometimes people need someone, especially at an entry-level position, or if you've never worked there before, you may need that kind of construction. I mean, not construction, that kind of instruction to tell you, okay, I need to do this, this, and this, and I need it to be done in this amount of time. And they don't have to make decisions. They can get accustomed to being in a new position or a new place until they become more comfortable and become well-versed in the company's expectations. And then they can move into a different kind of leadership. But for the most part, when someone starts new with no experience, they kind of have to follow that autocratic leader so that they do things the right way, or the way that policy and procedure states, so that they basically learn the ropes, or learn how things should be done in a certain area. Now, times that it should definitely not be used is it's not used for fear. Basically, people should not be afraid of you. People should be able to come and talk to you. So if you use an autocratic leadership in a group full of people who are very stressed, or it's in a very tense work environment, it leads to some really big problems. Another thing is, staff wants to know their opinions are heard. They want to know that if they see something going on that they can improve, that you're going to listen to them. So it doesn't work well in a lot of groups. Low staff morale and high turnover, that definitely happens if you don't listen to your staff, if you don't listen to the people in your group. Basically, they don't perform. So if if I gave you an assignment and it wasn't connected to anything, maybe I gave you the assignment for leadership before I explained leadership styles to you, then, and just told you to do it and didn't tell you why you were doing it, you might not really do it very well, or you might not do it at all, or you might just be, yeah, I'm not doing that. You would just stop doing it at all. Or you would just say, you know what, I'm not coming in on that day. She posted that tonight at 9 o'clock, and I'm not doing that tomorrow. Doesn't make any sense. She didn't explain. She just told us to do it. Also, as a teacher, sometimes y'all have things going on. Or as a leader, y'all have things going on that I need to know that you were out sick for 3 days and you can't turn your assignment in on time, or that your school is out, but other schools that I work with are not out. So those are things that I need to know, and I should be listening to y'all and not saying you're going to do it anyway if you don't have the ability to do it. Sometimes people don't have internet at home. Sometimes people have an after-school job. So we have to listen to each other so that we can make a good productive effort. And in an autocratic society, or in an autocratic group, or if you have an autocratic boss, then it's very difficult to continue once you learn how to do what you need to do in your job, to know that no one's going to listen to you, that you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over, and they're never going to let you try to make it better. So those are some of the reasons that it is not effective. A bureaucratic leader. So a bureaucratic leader basically inspires by example. Basically, it's someone who enforces the rule. Everything is done specifically by policy and procedure. It is bureaucratic leadership. It's black and white. You either do it or you don't do it. It's supposed to be done this way and this way only. It's very strict related to rules. So in healthcare, a lot of times we do have bureaucratic leadership styles, because so many things in healthcare are laws, or so many things can cause damage to patients. So sometimes we do work in certain areas where we do have a bureaucratic leader. Bureaucratic leaders are by the book. Everything is by the book. There's no gray area. If you got here at 8:01, but you were supposed to clock in at 8 o'clock, well, you were late. I don't care why, you were supposed to be here at 8 o'clock. You were here at 5:30. Why were you still here at 5:30? It doesn't matter. You were supposed to clock out at 5 o'clock. Those are people who are by the book managers. It's policy and procedure. They basically just kind of police everything you do. There tend to be pretty overbearing leaders as well. So one of the things that, if you ever watched Orange County Choppers, or some of the Pawn Stars or things like that, they tend to have a bureaucratic leadership, because the parent in that is basically constantly telling the children what to do it the way I say. This is how we do it. We don't veer from the assigned way. And so, as you can see, they have very structured things that they do. Now, what comes as an outcome is great, but there's a lot of bickering in those situations, often because when someone has an idea of how to do things to make it better, or make it more interesting, or make it more intricate, or maybe streamline a process, if it's not procedure, they just don't do it. It's effective when staff like to perform routine, when it's something you're doing routine over and over. So once again, one of the things that bureaucratic leadership works with is, if you are working with heavy equipment, if you are working with cranes, or you're working with machines, then basically you have to follow the procedure on that so no one gets injured. Maybe if you are someone who does chain of custody urine drug screens, there's a very specific procedure that you have to follow for that. And if you violate that, then basically, if you don't follow every step exactly like it says, then it's an invalid drug screen, and it doesn't work, and so it has to be redone. And if it's a a drug that leaves the system quickly, then it may not be present when it was present before, or it might prevent someone from getting healthcare benefits because they were hurt on the job. So it happens a lot when you handle cash, when you work at a bank or when you work at a grocery store. When you're handling cash, there's this very specific way that you count your money before and that you count it afterwards. And they may even have a specific way they want you to count change back to a customer to make sure you're giving them the right change. So there are reasons to do this, to prevent injury, to prevent loss, financial loss, to prevent other things from going on, things from happening that don't need to happen. But it's not always effective. It's ineffective when basically there are no gray area. Whenever basically you feel not useful, like when an employee feels unuseful, or they feel like that their job is not important, or it's not important to them anymore because they don't have any voice. They only do what is expected and no more. No one ever goes above and beyond. So in a grocery store, if all they cared about was you counting your money and not so much about how you treated the customer, then that would be an issue and people would stop coming there. In healthcare, yes, we have to follow very specific procedures and very specific policies based on how we different types of care that we provide. But we have to always remember that the patient comes first, that we have to respect the patient. We can't go in if a doctor orders us to give a shot and the patient says, no, we can't do it. We can't give it anyway because the doctor said so, because then we've actually assaulted a patient. So there are times that basically a bureaucratic leader is not effective. Democratic leadership style, also known as participative style or participative leaders. This encourages everyone to give their opinion, to help make decisions. Staff is informed of what cause and effect. So they're informed that staff feel like they need a raise, and they're informed, okay, we can give you $1 an hour raise, but we're not going to be able to hire another staff member to help pick up time. So we're going to have to increase your output during your normal work day to help to help with decision making and problem solving like that. Also, if there's an issue, maybe charting is being done late, or maybe training. We have a group of staff that come in and that says, hey, when I started here, I really wasn't trained on this procedure well. And so as a democratic leader, you would say, okay, tell me how we could have trained you better. And you sit down with that staff member and you actually listen to them saying, well, I really needed to know what was expected and how to perform a rapid strep. I needed someone to sit down and teach me. You just told me to do it, but didn't show me how to do it. And I think I've been doing it wrong for the last year and a half. So we don't just take that into consideration. We learn, okay, we need to teach everyone from here on out how to do that appropriately. So this gives some examples of different CEOs how they decided to basically empower their employees more on how organizational structure happened, how bottom level people on entry level positions, how they could impact those leaders at the top by understanding and listening to what people who had been in positions for 10 years or people who were new, taking a consensus of how employees were working and what ideas they had. They actually changed the product. And believe me, happy employees, busy employees and happy employees have the best outcome. And especially in healthcare, if you love your job, you take care of your patients. And it comes through that you're happy to be there. If someone hates their job, it comes through on the patient end, and the patient's what's the most important. It's most effective when we want to keep staff informed about how things are going to affect them. So, when we do a project, I usually try to connect it to something that we're doing so it enhances your learning. Staff also need to feel like they have a voice and that they're heard, and that when something's going wrong in their area, they have ideas on how to improve that. They want to know you're listening. When a group of employees come to you with problems, or a group of people come to you with problems, if you don't start listening and start to try to help with the personal growth and job satisfaction of an employee, it tends to make the entire team collapse. So it's really good. Democratic leadership is really good for teams. It's really good for large groups. It's good for growth in a company. It's good for personal growth. It's good for economic growth. So that people having a say is very important. When it's not used is when there's not enough time. So here's a good example of how it doesn't always work in the healthcare world, where you can be where democratic leadership works. When someone comes in and there is a major trauma, or someone is having a heart attack, or there's something significant going on, and there's very specific procedures that need to be followed in a specific order. At that point, we can't listen to opinions. We can't necessarily be concerned about how the employee themselves feel. We have to take care of that patient who's dying on the table. And basically how that works is everybody's given their job. They're not given a choice of their job. Someone is going to be who does dictation. They're going to write down everything that happens. The doctor's going to be the leader. The respiratory therapist is going to do their job of bagging or tubing or whatever needs to be done related to respiratory status. The nurse or two nurses that are in there. One may be tasked with pushing drugs. The other one may be tasked with maintaining lines, doing chest compressions, putting in a catheter. But you have your job, you follow your orders, and you do them, because if you veer from that, someone's going to die. So in that instance, if someone speaks to you harshly, or you feel like someone hurt your feelings in that situation, it doesn't really matter, because what's most important is that we save that patient. And so there's no democracy in a code. It is definitely an autocratic, occasionally bureaucratic, but mostly an autocratic instance. Now, as the nurse, you have to know what you're doing, so that if there is an error, you can be alert to that error, and you can voice what needs to be done while you're doing your job. It does happen a lot that if a manager feels threatened, you'll see this sometimes in society, where sometimes a leader will not listen to or will not hire people smarter than them because they feel threatened. Well, let me tell you right now, when I was in the hiring position, I loved to hire people that were smarter than me. I loved to hire people that knew new things and new techniques, because then they could teach me to make me a better leader. So you want to do that. And like I said, one of the biggest things is when patient or staff safety is concerned. If there is a fire in a building, there is a specific way to evacuate, and we can't go back and get our personal things. If you're going to lose a picture, it's okay. I'm sorry, you're just going to have to lose it. We got to get you out of the building. Your safety is more important than your personal belongings. Laissez-faire. This is kind of a leader that says, okay, you have this due by this day. Now figure out how to do it. They're not helpful to you. They are basically hands off. They don't give direction. They're not authoritative at all. They basically just say, here you go. They don't determine your goals. They don't determine how decisions are made, and they will not help with problem solving. You got to do it on your own. And that happens a lot in situations as well. I'm not saying that it's beneficial in a lot of situations, but there are leaders that are that way, that will say, okay, I need you guys to get a 500 patient seen in the next 3 days. Okay. And then they just leave, and then you have to figure out how to see 500 patients in the next 3 days. You have to figure out how to manage the staff and how to get the appointment scheduled and all of the things that go along with that. They're not there to give you structure to help you manage that. It is effective if staff is highly skilled, experienced, and educated. So in computer organizations, laissez-faire works a whole lot because you have people who basically have done this for years and they know the intricacies and they can build their own team and structure their own team on their self. Also, someone who's really driven. So someone who says, someone you could say, here's this project, run with it. And they're going to go above and beyond to get it done because it has to impact their own success the way they do it. Sometimes we give those things to consultants. You'll see in healthcare settings where sometimes a part of a facility is not doing well, and they'll turn it over to a consulting company and they'll say, look, I want productivity improved by 50% in 6 months. Just get it done. And then that consulting company will basically take on and set up the structure. But the actual CEO or leader is not the one doing it. Also, sometimes just because you can trust a staff member to just do it. In a situation, I hired a young lady, a very first pharmacy technician I ever hired. I told her, I said, you and I are going to have to figure this out as we go along because it's new. We've never had someone to do this in this position. But what you're going to do is prior authorizations and you're going to and do routine med refills. Well, I said, can you set down a structure of what you think you can do? And so she sat down and she wrote out a plan of what she thought she could do and what she needed to do to get that to get all those things done. She is very, very successful at her job, but she was an overachiever and she knew more about that than I did. It's one of those things, you hire people smarter than you. She knew something I didn't know and she figured it out and did a wonderful job doing it. It should not be used if people are not confident, if they need supervision, if they need regular feedback, if they need to know they're doing a good job, or they need to know that this isn't the right way that it's supposed to be done. You need to be able to tell your staff that you respect them and that you're thankful for what they're doing. You need to make sure that you can't do this if people don't understand their roles or they're inexperienced. So those are reasons you would not use this. Transformational leadership. Now, this is basically where whenever things need to change with a group, an organization, you need to help others change. You need to change yourself even. Charismatic leaders are usually transformational leaders. And what they're doing is they're usually kind of hard to teach. They're really charismatic. They really tend to be kind of powerful. But they tend to be able to take a situation and turn it around. I mean, that's basically what a transformational leader is doing. Uh-oh, wrong direction. Sorry, guys. So transactional leaders are basically someone, you do it for an exchange. So I go to work. People do it for a reward of some time. So transactional leaders are like, I call the pharmacy to fill a medication because I need my medicine and they fill my medicine for me and I pay them for my medicine. That would be a transactional leader, that you come in and you provide a service and you get paid for it. That isn't a transactional leader. Usually they're bureaucratic leaders related to transactional leaders. Situational leadership. So sometimes leaders are leaders just because of what's going on. So sometimes people are put in a leadership role because a leader has been asked to leave. Sometimes you're put in a leadership role because nobody else wants to do it. If I give you a group assignment and I have you assign a leader, sometimes everybody's like, not it, not it, not it. And then, so it's a situational leader where basically they have to be the leader so that the project gets done. Sometimes it happens that way. There are servant leadership. So a servant leadership means that they serve others first. We're going to make sure that the people in our group get what they need before we take care of our own needs. Usually they are very inspirational leaders. Servant leaders are generally inspirational leaders. They lead by example, but they want to make sure that the people in their group feel respected, they feel appreciated, and they want to make sure that you get what you need. Servant leaders tend to be public servants, your police officers, your nurses, your paramedics, your firefighters. They tend to be servant leaders because they're there to take care of the needs of others, but they also have a responsibility or an obligation to be a good, upstanding citizen in the community. So that would be a good example of a servant leader. All right, so we're going to go through these 3 factors a little later, but I just want you to take into consideration, and we'll do some practice questions on leadership a little later. So you guys have a great day, and I'll be back with you soon. Thanks, everybody.